tax return mistakes happen more often than you think and at all levels: high income, low income, even no income. It's typically not a big deal because most of the time they can be fixed. My parents always told me, if you make a mistake, fix it and move on. And that advice even works when there's a mistake on your tax return and you need to file an amended tax return, which, depending on the situation, could even mean more money in your pocket. I'm Mark Steber, Chief Tax Information Officer at Jackson Hewitt, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about filing an amended tax return, why you might need to or should amend a return, and even more. What does it mean to amend a tax return? Amending a tax return is exactly what it sounds like. It's to correct any tax errors on a previously filed tax return. Not every taxpayer needs to consider amending their tax returns, but it might be a good idea for those who either might be due more money from left-off benefits, or alternatively, those who owe the IRS money because they did not report all they should. And this can happen when you forgot to include income, like crypto or a side hustle. You claim the wrong filing status, like single, when really head of household. You need to make a change in dependents, like you left someone off, or someone wrongly claimed a dependent, or you claim someone not yours. You missed a tax deduction or a tax credit. You need to correct a general error, like missed side hustle income or deductions, or use the wrong mileage rate. You can be claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return. Tax law changes impact your return, like the new green energy credits or other late tax law change items. As I said, it happens more often than you think and for many reasons, and can lead to more money for you, or you might owe. The list of reasons when and why you should consider voluntarily amending your previously filed tax return can be endless and is unique to each taxpayer. Most of these reasons boil down to either getting a bigger refund or to correct your return with the IRS to pay some taxes owed and not paid. So why do that? To mitigate penalties and interest, of course. There are also times you might receive a notice from the IRS that will result in you needing to amend your tax return. This often comes from something not matching in their system and records, especially related to income that might have been left off. How do you amend your tax return? Great question. First, the IRS allows taxpayers to amend their tax returns for any open year. An open year is typically 3 years after the due date of the tax return year or 2 years after taxes have been paid in full, whichever is later. So think of it like this. In 2024, you could amend tax returns for tax years 2021, 2022, and 2023. So do you think you missed claiming that third stimulus check in 2021? Or forgot to report money you earned while driving for a rideshare company? You should consider amending your tax return. The IRS won't do it for you, especially to get you more money, because that's up to you. But if you owe, the IRS might do it for you or to you. In that same breath, the IRS also has the same time frame of open tax years to look at your tax return and figure out you made a mistake and can ask you questions or audit you. Okay, now how do you actually amend your tax return? It's pretty simple, really, and even easier if you work with a tax professional to avoid any additional mistakes on the tax return. You'll need to use the current Form 1040X, which can be done electronically or on paper. On this form, you'll need to enter the original amount on the original tax return, enter the new correct amount, show the difference between the two amounts, and explain each change by line. It's really that simple conceptually, but it can get more complicated, especially if you have more than one item that may impact other items in your tax return. When you amend your federal tax return and send it to the IRS, you'll also need to include copies of all other schedules or forms that have changes, any new forms created, and any other income-related documents like W-2s or 1099s that came after the original return was filed. But do not include a new Form 1040 on the return. That's a big mistake. Lots of people make it. Sending in a second 1040. That's not what you do. And then be sure to write or have amended at the top of the changed forms. Make sure any new income-related documents are included, but do not include any that were originally submitted with the first time when you filed your tax return. Is there a penalty for amending your tax return? No, not in most cases. But if the reason you're amending your tax return is because you made a mistake that means you underpaid the IRS, you can owe the IRS money and could face other penalties and interest. But in general, there isn't a fine or a penalty from the IRS to physically file an amended tax return. And if you work with a tax professional, they'll likely charge you a nominal fee to file the paperwork. There are a couple of common mistakes I see people make when filing an amended return, including guessing or estimating the total income that was originally left off the tax return, forgetting to also amend the state tax return, trying to claim credits or deductions you aren't actually eligible for, but trying to anyway. The best way to avoid making mistakes when amending your tax returns? Well, work with a tax pro that has experience in this area. At the end of the day, is it a good idea to amend a tax return? Absolutely, especially if you're owed more money. That's your money. And the IRS is not just going to send you money because you missed and failed to claim a credit or a deduction, or give you more money because you could have filed with a different filing status. Before I let you go, I want to quickly answer some other frequently asked questions about amending a tax return. Can I amend my tax return if I've already filed? Well, yes, as long as you wait to amend the return after the IRS originally processed the return. In other words, if you just filed your 2023 tax return and immediately realize you made a mistake, you'll need to wait until the IRS has reviewed and processed the initial filed tax return. What happens after I amend my return? Well, if you're owed more money from the IRS after filing an amended return, you'll receive a refund. And I highly recommend having this refund directly deposited into your bank account rather than having some paper check mailed to you. How long does it take to get a refund from an amended tax return? Well, it can take up to 4 months for the IRS to process an amended return. It's not a quick process, so just be patient. You can check the status using the IRS Where's My Amended Return? Or by calling this number about 3 weeks after filing your amended return. Can I amend a tax return from 5 years ago? Unfortunately, no. The IRS only allows taxpayers to amend returns from the past 3 years. Where to mail an amended tax return? Well, that depends on the state you live in. Confirm you and your tax pro are sending the 1040X to the correct address by looking on irs.gov, but it will either be mailed to the Department of the Treasury in Kansas City, Austin, Texas, or Ogden, Utah. But as I said, I recommend electronically filing your amended tax return and avoiding snail mail altogether. Still have questions about amending a tax return? Schedule an appointment to talk with a tax expert today on jacksonhewitt.com. And tell me in the comments, have you ever realized you forgot to include something in your tax return? If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for more valuable information and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all things taxes. Schedule an appointment to talk with a tax expert today at jacksonhewitt.com.